I mean, not 100%. If he gets on something that I'm not really interested in.
Who is
Oh, somehow I think she was looking for it. Yeah. I know on the Tuesday copy too, it wasn't on the community calendar.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Common Council for Tuesday, December 8th. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a roll call.
Alderman Strelchak.
Here.
Alderman Pouquet.
Here.
Alderman Meyer.
Here.
Alderman Lashinsky.
Here.
Alderman Garrow.
Here.
Alderman Hawkins.
Here.
Alderman Nerpin.
Here.
Alderman Adams.
Here.
Mayor Abendroth.
Here. We have a quorum. First item on our agenda is a public hearing for Ordinance 1460, a request by Robert Niebauer for Lakeside Development to dissolve a planned unit development under Ordinance 2008-1255 that applied to 6809 and 6835 West Mequon Road and create a new planned unit development for properties at 6729, 6809, and 6835 West Mequon Road for an approximately 8.3 acre property to allow a mixed-use development, including a 71-unit assisted living care facility. This was recommended by the Planning Commission November 9th, and the first reading was at the Common Council on November 10th. Need a motion to go into public hearing.
Move to go to public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second to go into public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is now open.
We always want people to know they're at the meeting.
I have two people who have registered. David Miller supports the project but does not wish to speak. Kyle Munn supports the project and does wish to speak. Mr. Munn.
Good evening. Thank you for entertaining my request to speak. I just want to say that I am in favor of this project. I'm a recent transplant to Mequon, and I've just moved in just a few blocks north of this proposed development, as well as a few blocks west of this building. And I can see a great need for an improvement in the retail opportunities on the west side of Mequon, as well as an increase in the number of available of high-end rental units. Having sought high and low to find a place to rent in this area, I couldn't find anything of the quality that they're proposing to build, and I would encourage you to take it seriously and allow them to move forward with this project. I think it'll be a great boon for the economy on the west side of Mequon in terms of the shopping opportunities, as well as the opportunities for those seeking shelter in this neck of the woods. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Munn. We have Mark Freiberg. Mark Freiberg. He's opposed and wishes to speak.
Hi, thanks. I was here back in October talking to the Planning Commission. I've always been in favor and supported the whole city center project and the whole concept. I'm from Country Terrace. I'm a licensed real estate agent. We are directly behind the proposed development. The street runs parallel to Mequon Road, and just as you're heading off of Buntrock to the west. So we're within a half a block of the proposed Dermont apartments that have been approved. I'm not opposed to any commerce or any of the things that are set to be hopefully put into here. What I am trying to figure out is how, in real estate, we look at these things often, and every study I look at with Mequon Trail, which has 225 units, they are currently at their lowest occupancy rate ever. They're at 84%. And for the first time in their existence, they're offering first month's rent free. I think everybody here knows where that's located. It's just a block west of this proposed development. So now we also have the condos that are being, or rather the apartments that are up above, next door here, as well as the 33 apartment for Dearmond on Buntrock, and then what we can obviously see around the corner here is from Buntrock going east to the railroad tracks on the south side of the street. From everything I've read, that's been proposed as a mixed use and more apartments. Back when this city center concept was developed, a questionnaire came to my home and I filled it out. I was excited about it. When 2008 came, everybody knows how that went. We don't need to discuss that. But now that things have picked up again, it seems like everybody's like in a hurry. I understand the TIF money has to be supported. I get all the economies of that. But everything that I'm looking at here is pointing to the potential of a, you know, from an apartment operator standpoint, a disaster. You're right now you're sitting at somewhere between 325 and 375 units, new, within 2 to 3 blocks. You know, the whole concept, as I understood it, was the questionnaire that was put out was, you know, where do you go for your shopping? And it was discovered that people go, they don't want to go to Port Washington Road. They think that's too far. I think that's kind of strange myself. But they're going outside of the community, and that's what the results of that questionnaire were. So in an effort to keep them here and keep the tax dollars and the funds here, it seems that the city center was the best solution for it. And it was promoted as the gateway, if you will, to Mequon. And I'm seeing something here that's completely different from what was proposed back then. Now, if amendments have been made and things have been changed, you know, I guess I've never heard of any of them. But we're stacking people into these units, sardine cans. Mortgage rates are at historical lows right now. People are leaving these apartments. I did some research before coming here, and their main reason is because they don't want to pay $2,000, $3,000 a month for an apartment where they can, you know, that'll buy them a lot of house. Having said that, if this project does go through, getting back to Country Terrace, our backyards face north, so ultimately our backyards are going to face the backyards of, and already does, of the memory care and potentially this. And what I'm wondering then is what kind of a buffer or allowance has been taken into consideration so that we would maintain some privacy. These are freestanding side-by-sides. We have our own basements, 2.5-car garages. They're not apartment style by any means, if you've never been back there. There's 39 buildings and 78 residents, over 14 acres, just adjacent to Stephen and Wilson. You know, I don't know if a buffer zone has been laid out in the actual site plan. How many feet are we talking about here? I could not ever get a vision of what that was. That's basically the reason that I came to speak. It was a two-sided coin to talk about the buffer zone and also my personal opinion on what I think is going a little too far with respect to rentals. People that rent, we all know they don't have skin in the game. People, if they're condos, I probably wouldn't have showed up tonight. You know, and I'll just finish by saying that there was some time ago, maybe some of you have heard about it, where a very large apartment complex in Brown Deer was bought and taken over by an out-of-state company, a property management company. Due to the scales of economics and the related vacancy rate, they applied for and received WIDA tax credits. The village board at that time fought this tooth and nail. They were threatened with a lawsuit and lost. That very complex right now is a magnet for police service, drug houses, drug trafficking, crime. It's completely ridden. That's right off of 57, 5 miles south of us. I'm just saying, you might want to think some of these things through as an overall concept when it comes to putting apartment buildings after apartment buildings after apartment buildings along this strip. Because that's not the way it was promoted 7 years ago. Thanks for listening. Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you, Mr. Freiberg. Suda Wagle supports and wishes to speak.
My name is Sudha Wagle. I have been a resident of Mequon for the last 45 years.
Congratulations.
And now I live on Essex Court, rather, Essex Place subdivision. I have moved 3 times within this city. I know Tom Zapchek for over 35 years. First as a colleague, because we both work for the same company. I used to bring new drugs into the market, and he used to sell it. Of course, you know, he made more money selling the medicines than I made as a salary. So anyway, we still, after the company was sold, we still remain friends, very good friends. He sold me a lot in Stonefields and also built my home there. You know, that was a very successful development, and it is still is very well known. But since then, after I sold the house, because all the children left, and so we were only 2 people and too big a house. Anyway, my point is that he has made very successful developments within Mequon, and I have seen his other commercial enterprises which have been very successful, and they were very good. I think one thing I know, that he's an excellent builder, has excellent plans. So as far as bringing in the level of construction, and as well as the total how the environment looks around, you know, they take very good care of it. I'm 81 years old, and I'm always looking for a place. Now, I don't want to live in a condo either. So if something like this comes up, I think it is going to help me, and I don't want to leave Mequon. And I think when I saw his plans, and I was impressed. And I think he will do a very good job in developing that area. I think Mequon needs it. I just heard somebody talking about Mequon Trail, and while after I sold my house, I lived there for about 1.5 years or 2 years, I don't know. And if I understand it correctly, I think many of people I know, they lived there too. But majority of them were building homes in Mequon. And so while their house being built, they were staying there. So I don't think that is going to really change the anything which as it comes to Mequon Trail. But I do know that if a good complex comes around in this area, I think it will be welcomed. The Mequon is probably the most affluent community, and I think appropriately, if you have apartments that are well suited for people, I think it will help. I also feel that the assisted living is also going to be very successful because in this area we need that. As we get older, we all are going to need some type of assisted living. And if it is within the within Mequon area, I think it is going to help. So I really support this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wagley. Does anyone else wish to speak?
Hello, I'm Roger Smith. I've been a resident of Mequon since 1985. Lived on Mequon Road, Mequon and Bobolink, and now I currently live in Rangeline Valley. I've known Tom for many years, I think maybe around 30, and he has done exceptional work in the city of Mequon, and he actually did an addition onto our house, and they did exceptional work and really professional. And the buildings that I've seen that he's done here are very tasteful. They serve a good purpose. They work with the people that they're building the buildings for. And I think that this project would really be beneficial to Mequon. It's estimated at about $30 million, which would definitely increase the tax base. And I think that really good senior living is very important. I know they're from the baby boomers, there are a lot of people that have elderly parents and they need a place to live. And also there isn't any retail space west of Cedarburg Road, very, very little. And I think that this would really be a beneficial project. It would help keep, I think, some people shopping in Mequon instead of going outside of Mequon. So I think this would be very beneficial. Lakeside Development is really a very good company. They've done terrific work in the city. They are a local company with their employees as Mequon residents. So I feel that this could be very beneficial to Mequon, and it would definitely add to the Mequon, to the city's tax base. And I think the retail space would be important, and also office space. I think this will make a very positive development for the city of Mequon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Looking for a motion to close public hearing.
So move.
Second.
Motion second to close public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is now closed. Move on to public appearances. Any citizen wishing to address the council on any matter not on our agenda may do so at this time. Anyone who wishes to address the council? Seeing none, we'll move on to public officials' reports. Mayor's comments. I would just like to wish everyone here and everyone at home a holiday season full of peace, love, and happiness. And that's that. Mr. City Administrator.
Following up with that theme, Mayor, thank you. Just a quick note, the holidays obviously are a busy time for everyone. City Hall is no stranger to busyness as well during this time of the year. And we actually will be closed for the holidays on December 24th, all day on Christmas Eve, all day on Christmas Day, December 25th. We will be closing early at 12 noon on New Year's Eve Day, December 31st. and will be closed all day on January 1st, New Year's Day. Opening back up to the public on Monday, January 4th.
Thank you. We will now convene as the Appropriations Committee in order to approve the meeting minutes of that committee from October 27th. You have a motion?
I'd like to move to approve the meeting minutes as shown.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve those minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We now will reconvene as the Common Council. Next item is our consent agenda, which includes Common Council meeting minutes of November, Architectural Board meeting minutes of October, Finance Personnel meeting minutes of October, Fire Department report for October, Planning Commission meeting minutes from October, Public Welfare Committee minutes from October, Zoning Enforcement and Site Compliance report through December 1st, Resolution 3342, approving the replatting of a condominium plat for properties located at 11715 and 11731 North Port Washington Road, which was recommended by the Planning Commission last night. Looking for a motion for the consent agenda.
Move to approve?
Second.
Motion and second to approve. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda is adopted. We will now convene as a committee of the whole, and the item for discussion is Resolution 3349, authorizing staff to enter into lease agreements with the Logamin Community Center's existing tenants.
Mayor, I'm going to recuse myself from this.
Okay.
Good evening. Since we left you last month, the Committee of the Whole, staff has been working with the city attorney on tracking down the contact information for the remaining tenants within the Logamin Center. As you recall, at last month's meeting, the Committee of the Whole voiced their support for the city to, in a goodwill gesture, offer short-term bridge leases, if you will, to help transition away from the Logamin Community Center as the current group is ceasing their managerial responsibilities at the end of this year, as well as terminating their lease with the city. That being said, this evening we're before you with a template lease agreement to accomplish multiple items, but in a sense to streamline the process. As I mentioned, a tenant list has been compiled, and it is attached with the various states of their leases as well, and current status updates. That was attached as an exhibit to the report. But the main reason coming before you this evening is to request authorization for staff to proceed with finalizing lease agreements with a handful of the tenants that do either A, have terms extending into 2016, and renegotiating those leases to carry the city's name versus the Logamin Center Management Group's name, but to also establish very clear and explicit rules, so to speak, or expectations from not only their side as tenants, but also our side as the landlord, so to speak. But the main points of the bringing forward a template lease agreement would be to streamline the process to finalize with each of these tenants, to establish monthly rent amounts, which our goal is to have them remain consistent, but change to a standardized monthly payment versus the various forms they took under the Logamin Center lease agreements, whether it be hourly or based upon sales or what have you. Establishing a specific end date of occupancy, establishing specific terms and conditions for each of the tenants, establishing a chain of command for maintenance emergencies, and restricting any further leasing or subleasing activities for that particular building, again with the goal of facilitating the transition process away from the Logamin Center. As I mentioned, the tenants with existing lease terms that carry into 2016 would be transitioned using this lease format that is being presented. The current short-term tenants, if you will, would be accommodated to the extent possible, utilizing very similar terms. The long and short of it, there is some fiscal impact involved here in that staff's objective with these new leases is to preserve the existing lease terms, but to have the tenants cover operational costs outside of or what is above and beyond what the city is already obligated to do so as the owner of the building. The new agreements would look to achieve a cost-neutral arrangement to the extent possible. But I would like to point out as well, the historical arrangement was that the management group, the Logoman Center LLC management group, paid an annual lease rate to the city. Any rent obtained from the current tenants is well above and beyond that. So we would actually realize some additional temporary revenue in this particular case, but we would aim to utilize that for management purposes of the building and not look to rely upon that for any significant budgetary impact. At the end of the day, staff is requesting authorization to move forward with finalizing this template agreement with the various tenants that exist in substantially the same form. Obviously, there will be nuances with each of the individual tenants, but substantially the agreement that's before the committee this evening is what we would look to utilize as our baseline moving forward.
Alderman Adams.
And looking at this template with tenants with leases and things, I notice of the ones that want to stay, it's about $9.50 a month, with someone wanting to use it just for a month in June for extra. So $9.50 a month versus the heating expenses. I mean, I don't want to take it. I was very concerned when we want to work with tenants, especially with Gathering on the Green, the historical societies, ones that members of the community are members of. But I see a lot of names here that I don't even recognize, and I just want to make sure if we get those 10 degree below zeros, I don't know how efficient that building is. I'd like to know what the heat expense is going to be versus the money we're getting in.
To clarify, we already pay those expenses. With the Logoman's lease of $1 a month, we already pay all the heating and all the utilities. So from a budgetary standpoint, we already have that covered as a part of the 2016 budget. So anything that we achieve from leases would be a revenue positive as opposed to the cost for
So
the
our
building.
taxpayers are paying the money for everybody right now.
Yes, they
I'm
have
just saying,
throughout.
to have just 3 or 4 groups that total $9.50 a month, if they weren't in there, we could get the heat way down just to keep the pipes from bursting until we decide what to do with this building. You know, I don't want the taxpayers to pay absorbent and heating bills just to have 4 or 5 private companies there when, and I don't know what, I'm not a real estate attorney, what a typical landlord does, but I would think they give them 30-day notice, or they've already had notice theoretically because they know we've been dealing with this, 90-day notice, and then they'd be out of there when it's so cold and we get the heating costs down. And we can start planning on what to do with that building quicker.
Well, I certainly think that the planning will take place regardless. I mean, that discussion still needs to be had by the council as to what the long-term objective is for the building. But with respect to heating costs, in the absence of the common council having made a decision, while there might be some minor cost savings in terms of being able to turn the heat down, we are also trying to cover some existing lease agreements that extend beyond December 31st that I think the city attorney can speak to if needed, but that we do have some obligation to at least see through the end of their lease terms.
Thank you. I'd like to hear that
Alderman Meyer.
eventually.
Maybe I didn't hear it when you were discussing. What's your drop dead date on this?
We would look to see people through and guide them towards transition, but currently, right now, it is assumed that an anticipated term for the Historical Society would be through September of next year. Currently, they're in discussions to find a new location, but by our best estimate, they are probably the party that is farthest away from finding a relocation spot at this point.
Historical Society.
So another 9 months of, and and I don't want to kick the Historical Society out by any means, but, you know, but you don't think that a 6-month time frame to get this done is a long enough time to?
Well, obviously, at council's direction, we can put any lease term forward. So if council directs that the drop dead date is June rather than September, then we can propose that as a part of the negotiations with the Historical Society.
Alderman Bouquet.
When we discussed this as a committee of the whole at our last meeting, we all expressed real concern about the Historical Society, and I think that we need to maintain that. I think, you know, there are no heating costs in the summertime, so I'm not sure keeping it open through the summer would be a particular drain on us. And it seems to me that if at this point we have been getting $1 a year and maintaining that building and all of the expenses in it for quite some years, now we're going to generate some income until it closes.
Correct.
And it seems to me that we can support it at least for the Historical Society while we hopefully help them find a new location.
Alderman Strelchak.
Approximately how many square feet does the Historical Society use? I know, detailed question.
It is a significant portion of the building. I believe is it the second floor?
The lower floor.
The lower floor. They use a significant portion of the lower floor primarily for storage, and then they use the meeting room for their meetings, so to speak. So they do have a significant amount of space there. I apologize. I do not have the exact square footage.
I agree with the premise of supporting the Historical Society. They do a huge service for the city. And if anything, I think the group is underappreciated. However, I feel that 9 months to establish a new location might be stretching the limit a little further than we might need to reach on this. My understanding is at the last council meeting we had a pretty good, or committee of the whole meeting, we had a pretty good consensus that we were going to be looking at maybe a 90-day kind of exit plan, looking to get through just kind of barely winter, and if a couple people were struggling, to help them find a spot. You know, I would invite the city, if we're going to maintain a building for a tenant, to maybe look at some other city property where they could temporarily relocate while they were looking and not risk an opportunity cost with that facility. That facility is right adjacent to all the town center activity. It's going to be a desirable location, and to revisit this 9 months from now, you know, August timeline, I would be concerned that, you know, we would possibly lose some opportunity cost before year end. Somebody may want to do something with that structure. We may have something we could entertain.
I guess two things to that. Number one, I certainly wouldn't ever propose that we would wait until the termination of any of these to have the discussion regarding what the long-term goals are for the city with those buildings. As far as I'm concerned, as the agenda allows, we can have that discussion and further those conversations. Obviously, a portion of that would be knowing what the obligations are to any of the tenants. As indicated to Alderman Meyer, if we're directed to provide a different time frame for that, we can. Originally, part of the justification behind that date was, at the time, we thought that we were still accommodating Gathering on the Green, and we anticipated doing that through their summer event. So we anticipated having at least them as a tenant through that same time frame. So we were really just matching up the Historical Society with that lease now. In the meantime, we found that Gathering on the Green was able to find a different location, and we just maintained that same time frame for the Historical Society. But again, at the direction of I guess it's the committee in this situation, we can amend that as you so direct.
Right. The other thing to remember is that the lease template provides for termination upon 30 days notice. So even if we give them till September, as part of the process of discussing what we're going to do with the property on a going forward basis, some opportunity arises that says we need to act now, we have the opportunity under the form lease to say, here's your 30-day notice. Hate to do it to you, but here you go. Obviously, with a group like the Historical Society, at that point, we'd probably look to try to assist them in any way we could, but we would have that right under the template. So,
I think the Historical Society is a very caring, volunteer-based organization. So I just want to make sure that when we're communicating with them in specific, that we're clear about what could happen on timeline. And again, if there's some temporary storage area that we could offer even at City Hall, there's an extra space that's underutilized or another city-owned property, I would entertain definitely an opportunity for them, to help them along. Again, I believe they do a service for the city that, is very detailed and requires some help.
And we have had conversations with the Historical Society of trying to make them aware that the city, at least as of now, doesn't have an interest in being a long-term landlord, whether that's at the Logaman Center or frankly here, if there was any temporary relocation proposed. Our goal is obviously to help them find a permanent home. I mean, for the longevity of the society as well as the city, that's certainly in everyone's best interest, is to find a home that they can move to and stay. As Jesse indicated, they have a significant amount of material, and my guess is moving it once is, to their benefit rather than moving it multiple times.
Consider putting in a city bulletin that the Historical Society is looking for some assistance and maybe some volunteer. Anything to help them would be great.
Our current commitments, according to the chart, last through April.
Correct.
Okay. And I think that should be our target to wrap it up by the end of April. If we can't do it, of course, we have to extend somebody's lease, that's fine, but I think that should be the target.
Okay.
Agreed.
Alderman Adams?
Yeah, I think that's a good compromise. And I do want to point out, it's kind of hard to have this discussion, at least for me, without having the maintenance number. I don't know if we have a custodian go there. I don't know what it costs to run that thing for a month. So it's hard for me to make an educated, it's easy to make an emotional decision. And I will say on this flow chart, we have tenants with lease requirements. You kind of tell us where everybody's at, except Historical Society is researching alternative locations, so I did not have a clue they wanted to stay through the summer. I mean, I agree that if, with a little fire and help, sometimes deadlines create results. Otherwise, it can go on and on. So let's shoot for April, I agree.
Alderman Meyer?
Yeah, the one thing I want to make sure is that it doesn't slow down our discussion on the final use of that property. So we move forward with that. And I think that extending it out farther, even though that wouldn't stop that process on it, I think it may deter some people if there wasn't an end date on that, when the tenants would be out of there. If we're kind of wondering, well, geez, can we start on something 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now, a year from now? So I think the sooner the better on it.
Okay, actually, what we do need here is a recommendation to approve Resolution 3349, move it on to the full Common Council.
I'll make a recommendation.
Okay.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on that resolution? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Well, we get to vote on it.
Okay. Is there anything else?
Thank you.
Anybody wants to bring up? Okay. We will reconvene as the Common Council and take up ordinance 2015-1460, which was the subject of our public hearing this evening, basically creating a new planned unit development for properties at 6729, 6809, and 6835 West Mequon Road for an approximately 8.3 acre property to allow a mixed-use development, including a 71-unit assisted living care facility. This was recommended by the Planning Commission in November, and the first reading was at the Common Council on November 10th. Does anybody wish to make a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion? Alderman Meyer.
Lakeside Development is a good developer here for the city. There's no doubt about that. I hope that, and I'm going to vote for this, but I hope that the Common Council heeds some of the comments of one of the residents here, and I echo some of those comments with the fact of we may be at this tipping point of how many apartments do we need inside of the city? Do we need to have more than what is here now? And plus the fact of that, we're looking at other developments here that we've already supported and putting money behind with the Town Center 2 area inside of it, which are going to be having more apartments inside of it. So frankly, if this would have been like the last piece fitting into this whole Town Center section, I don't know if I'd vote for it. But it being here now and serving a purpose here that we need now here for the city, I'm going to vote for it. But I'm just leery about the amount of apartments that we are pushing into this area here, central area inside of the city, and not being as cognizant about what we have to look further to in future developments for our own town center, which we're going to be supporting here. So I will vote for this, but just concerned, and hopefully we take a look at this at a future date.
Alderman Bouquet.
Also, in relationship to some of the comments that were made in public hearing, I would ask staff if there have been discussions about a good buffer plan between the existing development and the new development.
Sure, that southern property line does have an established row of evergreens on it. In addition to that, Planning Commission, per the zoning district, will look for any necessary gaps in that landscaping to be filled. There is a required setback, and with the 3-story construction of those rear residential structures, it does require a conditional use grant approval by the Planning Commission, which includes a shadow study. Now, we don't expect that there'll be any shadowing issues on the properties to the south, but that is something that we'll make sure we analyze and prep for the Planning Commission approval.
Thank you.
Alderman Meyer.
Just one other thing. It looks like, is there only going to be one entry and exit to this whole development?
That is correct.
So for both those, plus the retail, plus the apartments inside, they're going to have that one. So they're going to take away that existing one that's there now by next to the Memory Center?
That's correct. That one will go away, and then the site where Ivana's trunk is, that further driveway location will go away as well. WSTAT will only allow that one point of entry through our master access planning, and that's one of the reasons that we as staff pushed for the multiple property owners here to work collectively and come forward with the PUD. Otherwise, all of that traffic, had this developed piecemeal, would have likely gone through the memory care parking lot, which I don't think would have been the right solution. And I think the location of that main gateway entrance point being positioned underneath the overhead power lines is a well thought out and positioned location for that as well, because we wouldn't otherwise be able to have any structures. So we're occupying the street frontage with buildings per the zoning district, everywhere that we can on that site, and utilizing those overhead power line areas for the access and parking.
Well, I agree it's a great place to have that there, but with the amount of, now there won't be a lot of traffic from the memory care facilities, but to the retail and also the apartments, you're probably going to see some pretty significant backup inside of that area, and access onto Mequon Road, at the morning and evening hours, there'll probably be some pretty significant backup on that road.
Yeah, and one of the things we planned and showed through some various site planning is that with the depth and size of those parcels on Mequon Road at the time of the creation of the zoning districts, we hope to establish basically a mid-block access point. So because those parcels were always expected to develop as commercial in the front, we wouldn't see apartments that likely that close to Mequon Road. And then the residential to the rear, we're establishing an access point that runs parallel to Mequon Road at about mid-block. We've aligned that in a way under the PUD and master planning for that entire block. We've aligned that in a way that we can provide for future connectivity as the adjacent parcels develop. So we'll hopefully be able to achieve long-term access then out to Bunch Rock. We may not be able to achieve it all the way out to Mequon Trail because one of those properties adjacent to Mequon Trail has some significant wetlands on it. But we're trying to provide for interconnectivity and alternative access so that not everything has to funnel out Mequon Road.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Strelchak?
Well, I'd just like to highlight that the premise for the TIF district is to redevelop the area, and I think that if you look at the site in its current condition, this is a fabulous improvement. I can speak on behalf of the Lakeside Quality. I have several clients that rent from Lakeside in their commercial establishments. I've looked at Lakeside homes when I was in the process of purchasing my home and think that they build a beautiful home, and there's a strong attention to detail. It was clear to me as I reviewed this plan that the attention to detail and the attention to interactivity here for the apartments was brought forward. I liked the fact that there was more of a community feel beyond just an apartment structure, which would be just a place to go and crash your head. They were looking, in my opinion, to the essence of what would be a desirable town center interactivity. People would have a place that they could call home. They have things, amenities within the facility that they could enjoy. There's an extra expense in doing that, and it looks like it's well done. And this is also, I'd like to highlight, creates a walkable community to the town center. And these residents of this facility are going to add value by not only shopping in the retail sector on that site, but also going to the rest of the town center to support that as well. I'm in support of this. I do have, again, I share Alderman Meyer's concern with the amount of apartments going up and just kind of where we're going with this as a council as a whole. The CBRF, I think, is beautifully done. Again, in the town center district, it's nice to have a breakup and a mix, but I'm envisioning personally a little more interactivity and a little more retail. I think it fits this site. So I'm in acceptance of that, and I will support it.
And if I may just add, not only the residents supporting, hopefully, the demand for commercial, but the residential care facility, the care apartment complex, will have 40 employees added to the neighborhood as well, who are providing 24-hour care at that operation.
Which is great. Just utilities and things that aren't shown on this site. I guess the only question that I have is the utilities will be not in a box near Mequon Road. They'll be back further in the site.
Yes, we will work with them on those.
Don't care for that box.
Round mounted and roof mounted.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Alderman Hawkins.
Yeah, I think we all agree that Lakeside Development, a local developer, has done quality work in the city for many, many years, and I certainly trust that they will put up a quality site here. A couple of questions. Ivana's Trunk is going away, that building?
Correct. In the PUD, we discussed the phasing of removal of that, what to do with that commercial entity in the interim.
I know staff has reviewed the apartment issue. Has the Economic Development Board reviewed the apartment issue that's been raised tonight?
No, they have not.
Okay. And what is staff's opinion?
We do have some market data. We have data that was supplied by the market analysis that the applicant provided. We do have some of our own confidential resources that we've looked at in terms of apartment complexes. I can forward all of that material to council and get the conversation started about absorption rates. What I can tell you tonight, though, is that at the time of the creation of the zoning district, we had discussed the potential for just over 400 new residential dwelling units in the form of multiple family in the town center. Right now, the Milwaukee market, as well as the Washington Ozaukee County market, the market analysis groups those two counties together, has very strong occupancy rates. We're looking at 97 to 98% occupancy. In Washington and Ozaukee County, the supply is not meeting the demand. It hasn't for the last few years, and it continues to show a strong, healthy demand in our market. The only new apartment complex that has been built in either of those counties is Mequon Town Center project here at 28 units. With the addition of these apartments, as well as the potential of what we know about the city-owned site, we're looking at adding another 170 some units. So we're up to, with the approval of those pending projects, we're up to about 233. The market analysis and research suggests that it would be a demand in the Mequon market and any competing markets with Mequon. There would still be an additional demand of about 300 to 400 units. So I think the market analysis is telling us that even with the projects that we've approved and that are immediately pending, there will still be additional demand for units. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that's Mequon's acceptable tolerance level, and I think there are a few years here in which we have the opportunity to capture that momentum. And we may, in a few years, see those absorption rates and those start to slow down.
Thank you.
Alderman Adams.
I had a chance to talk with Rob, my fellow co-chair planning commissioner, this morning, because we both dealt with a couple of the same issues between the November and December meeting, and I wanted to see how things washed out. And it's funny because I know I've raised the question, and I'd like to see, like, within a square mile of the city center, like putting the center where the Legion is, how many apartments there are, because there's some that we forget that are here. The ones behind Piggly Wiggly, the ones we put up on Cedarburg Road on the river, which are theoretically elderly, but it's 55 and over. Sure. And I think, you raise a really good question. It's one that I've also been concerned with. And Rob has, I think, been nice enough to ask for a committee of the whole meeting just to kind of see where we're at, where we're going, and those type of questions, so we can really get into them. And I totally support that. But what we have before us tonight, I don't want to hold them up for that discussion, even though it's big. One thing that came out when I was a planning commissioner in November was the age group of people that are going to rent this, and this probably holds true for all the apartments. I think it was like 25 to 34, 36-year-olds, and then people that are more, empty nesters that go to Florida. And when you think about it, I'm hoping we get a lot of the younger people, because who's going to buy the homes? And some of the ranches in Mequon. We have beautiful, affordable homes on 1-acre lots throughout Mequon still that were built in the 50s and 60s. And I think those will be the next generation, hopefully, that will love Mequon and build their houses here, or buy the houses we have in the existing market and raise their children in our schools. So that could be a positive, but we have to keep the apartments healthy. I was kind of hoping, but that would be a discussion about the town center, to see some of these as condominiums. I know we say multifamily, but we're not saying apartments. It could also be multifamily condos. I'd like to see a little bit more ownership in the area of the town center for Pride. But this is not probably the best one to even ask to even consider because of the high tension wires. I don't think that would be an easy sell. So I'm really thrilled that a good developer's coming in. I, like Connie, am very concerned about buffering. It's really hard to read some of this. I don't care what your age is, but it looks like that apartment is 10 feet from the lot line? 10 feet?
Right, that's the zoning district requirement.
Wouldn't a zoning district requirement, and that's town center?
This is the arrival corridor.
Arrival corridor. When it's against the zoning of single, these condominiums to the south, shouldn't they reflect their zoning requirements too? I know they supported the city center, the gentleman, but if it was a house, single-family house in the back, wouldn't it be 20 feet or more?
I'd have to look back at the zoning districts. I know we required increases to setbacks depending on adjacency, but the adjacencies are not single-family residences.
But you're putting up a 3-story building against people that do consider them their homes, even though they're a double home. I think that's what we're looking at, are 2 units behind them, just like townhouses. To me, it just doesn't, I guess it's the law, but to go 10 feet for a 3-story building, when I'm pretty sure those multiple units, probably at least a 20-foot, I would think that when you have zoning that connects, you might want to respect the zoning that was there and reflect that. I can see town center, if you had condos there and the lots are coming together and you've got parking lots, and I can see that within the town arrival corridor. But you're dealing with people that have a real investment into their homes, and I'd like to see that go into 20 feet, or whatever we would respect that they did to their neighbors. Just an idea, but I'd like to hear feedback from that. But I do think it's a worthy development, and it's going to meet a lot of community needs, and I'm not against it, but I'd like to massage that part.
Well, that's an item of site planning that we can take a look at prior to it going back to Planning Commission. If there's an opportunity to increase that, we can work with the developer and just make sure that it's not impacting their operational needs for.
Okay,
for their
and one last thing, and Rob alluded to this, the place has a swimming pool, I think a sauna, a whirlpool, I think it might even have a car wash bay. I mean, they have a lot of nice counters. It is a very upscale spot, and I like to see that. I wish some of our neighborhoods would go back to some of the neighborhoods from the 60s, like Lac de Coeur, that have a shared pool, things that create community. My neighborhood creates community. I'd like to see that in more, not just multifamily, but in neighborhoods.
Sure. We did visit a recent redevelopment that the developers did in the 5th Ward, and we have some images of the interior of the building. Very high-end, nicely done construction and interior design. A lot of amenities, rooftop gardens, community room, obviously below-grade parking, etc. So if we're interested in looking at some of those images, we're happy to share those as well.
Thank you.
Alderman Nervin.
Just like to voice my support for this. This is just the kind of synergy we're looking for with the development that's going on in the town center and continues to go on. I would welcome a discussion on ultimate number of apartments we're willing to put in this area. I don't think we're at the max yet, but we've got some significant momentum going with Town Center 1 and now Heritage Estate or Heritage Commons.
Yes.
And some other quality developments like this. So keep the development going, but then, as everyone's suggesting, keep an eye to the future and see what's coming down the pike.
Yes, we're happy to come back for a committee of the whole discussion and talk big picture.
Alderman Strelchak.
Just a really quick question on the tree buffer. The resident did bring up that concern, and then as Alderman Adams has stated, if this is a little bit closer to the property line and there is a row of pine trees on there, in my experience, that the discussion of pine trees is there, but unless they're a preserved tree, those are up for discussion as far as removal. So are those specimen trees that are to remain? Is there...
The development team has not asked for removal, and in fact, we've talked about the preservation of those and, talked about what a benefit it is that those are in place. So I don't anticipate them coming forward with a request.
Yeah, although my complete support doesn't hinge on that, it would be something that would be important to me, especially if I was a neighbor.
Yeah, they're pretty substantial trees.
Okay.
I'm going to just, on the tree issue, it's only white pines. It is not arborvitae and things, just white pines is the only one on the specimen list. And I believe their root zone is very shallow. And when you build a building, you have to protect root zones because you can drive equipment on the roots and you might not see damage for 5 years, but ultimately it will kill the tree. I don't care if it's a birch, any kind of tree, oak, you have to protect the root zone. If they only have 10 feet to build and these pines are on their property, I don't think they're preservable if they're moving big equipment. So these are things we need to get answers to.
Yep, those are all the items that we'll be able to address as part of the development approval with Planning Commission.
Landscape plan.
What's that?
Landscape planning
Yep.
and everything, that'll come later. Alderman Garrell?
Our demographics, I look at the demographics of Mequon, I think that it's going to be tough to get 24 and 36-year-olds to stay here. coming up, but I intuitively thought our apartments were moving way too fast, and I agree with Alderman Meyer, and I'd like that to be brought before the Economic Development Board, because we have some real professionals there to take a look at how much we can absorb in apartments going forward. I see our demographics, and I look at the demographics of Mequon, which is one of the most important things to look at is where is the population going? We can continue to expand a lot in these areas that are 55 and older because we're going to continue to get older. That's sort of the market's coming right to us. So I always support that, and I'll support this project, but I thought the gentleman who spoke, being in the real estate market, added some valued insight into how things work, and we have to be very cautious on how many apartments we put up, because those things start going vacant. One goes vacant, the next one starts to lower their rates, everybody starts to lower their rates, and snowballs. So let's take a look at this at the Economic Development Board and get some of those professionals to really know this market, to take a look at it, and then try and get more of a concrete number of how many we really can absorb.
Ready to vote? Call the roll.
Alderman Stralchuk?
Aye.
Alderman Pouquet?
Aye.
Alderman Meyer?
Aye.
Alderman Lisinski?
Aye.
Alderman Garrell?
Aye.
Alderman Hawkins?
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin?
Aye.
Alderman Adams?
Aye.
8-0, and that ordinance is adopted. Good luck to you, gentlemen. Moving on to ordinance 1462, an ordinance amending chapters 30.94 and 30.96 of the Mequon Municipal Code as it relates to the regulation and issuance of fireworks permits. This ordinance was recommended by the Public Welfare Committee this evening, am I correct?
It was.
And this is a first reading. Moving on to resolutions. Resolution 3343, an amendment to the development agreement for the enclave at Mequon Preserve Subdivision located at 10729 and 10839 North Wauwatosa Road. This was recommended by the Planning Commission last evening, allowing 4 homes to be built prior to construction of the road. And if you're reading the resolution you have, we added that they can use lots 4 and 9. And that was the recommendation of the Planning Commission last night.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I don't need a roll call for this, do I?
You do not, although we should clarify that that motion is consistent with the Plan Commission recommendation or as presented in the packet.
Well, the packet didn't, the packet recommended 4 additional lots, or 4 lots, 4 homes, and we added that they could use lots 4 and 9. That was the addition to that resolution.
I agree with that. So
Okay.
yes, the motion should reflect that.
All right, let's have a roll call.
Alderman Pouquet?
Aye.
Alderman Meyer?
Aye.
Alderman Lisinski?
Aye.
Alderman Garrell?
Aye.
Alderman Hawkins?
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin?
Aye.
Alderman Adams?
Aye.
Alderman Stralchuk?
Aye.
8-0, and that is adopted. Resolution 3347, authorizing the selection of Management Information Technology Advisory Services for the City of Mequon. This was recommended by Finance personnel this evening.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Alderman Meyer?
Aye.
Alderman Lisinski?
Aye.
Alderman Garrell?
Aye.
Alderman Hawkins?
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin?
Aye.
Alderman Adams?
Aye.
Alderman Stralchuk?
Aye.
Alderman Pouquet?
Aye.
8-0, and that is adopted. Resolution 3348, approving a transfer of funds from the contingency account to various department accounts in the general fund. This is recommended by Finance personnel this evening.
Move approval?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion? None. Call the roll.
Alderman Lisinski?
Aye.
Alderman Garrell?
Aye.
Alderman Hawkins.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Adams.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchak.
Aye.
Alderman Bouquet.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
8-0, and that's adopted. Resolution 3349, authorizing staff to enter into lease agreements with the Logamin Community Center's existing tenants as deemed necessary. Recommended recently by the Committee of the Whole.
Move to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Is there any discussion?
Are we making that to April on this? This is as deemed necessary. Are we making that the April date on here for it?
Our goal is to bring all of these home by April 30th. The resolution provides some additional flexibility, but our goal, and we'll endeavor to hit that April 30th mark.
Alderman Hawkins.
I agree with that goal, because if the decision of the council is to demolish the building, then we'll have all summer to do that.
Okay. The resolution doesn't include an end date. It just authorizes to extend the leases, but I think staff knows our direction. Correct.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Hawkins.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Adams.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchak.
Aye.
Alderman Bouquet.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Lisinski.
Abstain from this.
7-0 with one abstention, and that's adopted. We have no specified unfinished business, no petitions, memorials, remonstrances, or communications. Under specified miscellaneous new business, we have the mayoral appointments of election officials.
Move to approve.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second to approve the poll workers. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is adopted. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned.